What's going on, you guys? It's your huggable hipster here, and I have two very chaotic people on my podcast. My co-host and her insane husband right now. No, actually her lovely husband and also my good friend Chris. We're here today. We're going to be discussing Resident Evil, and this is going to be a two-part podcast because this is in preparation for the 8th game, which comes out May 7th. I'm very, very excited. I know all of you must be. But before we get into the podcast, there's some kind of house cleaning type things I need to get into, where the name change of the podcast, as you guys can see, it is The Casual Nerd. We decided to change the name again, considering the fact that Casually Caffeinated, surprisingly, was taken. So if you heard that in the last podcast, strike that from your memory. It's gone from existence, okay? Whoever has that podcast name, apologies, bam/sir. So we're going to continue on with The Casual Nerd, since I already have that as a news gaming episode type thing on my YouTube channel. It's going to be carried on in extended forms as a podcast on here. So with that being said, children, are we ready?
I'm fucking ready. Let's go.
Yes and no.
So we're diving into this with lore, with favorite moments, with chaoticness. Where do we want to start, Chastity?
Well, okay. So
yeah, what was your favorite moment playing the video game?
Sure.
My favorite. Wait, okay. Whose favorite moment are you talking about? Chastity's or mine?
Okay,
Chastity.
Don't do this. Don't do this. Okay, sir. Don't. For the audience, I have never physically played a Resident Evil game. However, I have watched my husband play the games, and I am all read up on literally all the lore. And so it's basically like I've played the games. Okay?
Yeah, we pretty much spent like the last 2 days reading nothing but Resident Evil lore.
Yeah. It's so extensive.
Dedication.
I
mean, it is.
Yeah. So, because of that, bear with us. We're going to go through some history here. Yeah. Okay. So, technically, the very start of this is in 1943, which is when the U.S. does its first biological weapons program. And then some years pass, and Spencer, he begins Project W, which is the project, a eugenics project that he does with I believe it's 13 Wesker children, but only 2 survive. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. 2 survive of Albert and Alex Wesker.
Yep. Yep.
Right. Then there is a collapse in the Soviet Union in the 1980s, and then a program that's referred to as Bright Raccoon 21, which is an economic jumpstart to Raccoon City through Umbrella. And obviously it's basically a cover. You know, Umbrella comes in and is like, yeah, we'll help your town and provide jobs, but, you know, Umbrella is shady as fuck and is really using it as a cover so that they can do their programs, and that starts in the 1990s.
Yeah, but the thing with Project W is that he was trying to get everyone into his little prestigious school, so he can dwindle down like the best candidates for his higher gene, whatever like he thought would be like superior genetics. And so he would pick these proteges and these prodigies that were like geniuses and send them to these schools. And so yes, the Wesker kids, there was 13 of them, but the other proteges and geniuses that was out there was also William Birkin. So William Birkin and Albert Wesker were at the same academy, and he told, was it in the 80s? No, it was in the 60s that we kind of glossed over. That they found in the 60s, they found the progenitor gene or the progenitor virus inside one of these plants that you find in like Resident Evil 5. You actually come across it with Sheva. And in those plants, they had the progenitor virus, which all the other strains come from. The T virus, G virus, all the other strains come from the progenitor virus.
Yes.
Because they found that it can regenerate dead cells.
Mm-hmm.
And the founding people, there was like 3 founding people. There was Oswald E. Spencer, and then there's Dr. Marcus.
Mm-hmm.
And Spencer, you can see him in the wheelchair. Marcus is the guy who is like the lich dude from Resident Evil 0. And Ashford.
Right.
Was a noble family. And then we also found that there's like a side canon story where there's this Beardsley fellow.
Mm-hmm.
His name was the 16th Earl Beardsley.
Yes.
Which is pretty relevant because Spencer was an Earl.
Yes,
as well.
Actually, we should make mention. Is Marcus also an Earl, or is he just,
Nah, just
a smart guy?
Actually.
Yeah, he's just a smart dude.
Okay.
But yeah, so the Beardsleys, although he wasn't like recognized as one of the founders of Umbrella Pharmaceuticals, he was involved in the T-Virus project. And following his death, his daughter Mylene, the 17th Countess, continued on his work, and she actually started developing this like neo T-Virus.
Right.
And then she incorporates her DNA into a fertilized human ovum to create a clone of herself. So we have our first instance of cloning, which is like one leg of my theories here. And what else did she do? She did something else. She got experimented on by her father that allowed her to like use full access of her brain. And because of her cyber techniques, she was able to like hack and effortlessly access military files. And she also sought to gain over the Umbrella Corporation, which she thought had actually been founded by the Beardsleys alongside Spencer. And she also created a humanoid BOW that she called Millennia.
Okay.
And I just want to point out for people who might be listening that there is this one overarching thing that is important to note. Nowhere does it specifically say that this is exclusive to zombies. I know people are worried about the 8th game being, off the beaten trail for Resident Evil, thinking that it can only be zombies, it can only be the undead. Technically, there was no mention of it just being exclusive to zombies, since there's vampires and somewhat looking werewolves in this game as well. That's coming up.
Yeah.
There hasn't been just zombies for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think the when it comes to the monsters, that you don't pigeonhole them into categories of like, zombie, vampire, werewolf, whatever, that instead just view them all as biological weapons. Because that's that's really what they are. They're just biological weapons. Yes. Anything else you wanted to say, Chris?
I think there's some other stuff that happened in the 60s.
There's yeah,
there's other stuff that happened in the 60s. But I'm just going to try and stick to mentioning the stuff that's relevant to the whole theory here.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that's relevant is we have a noble family connected. And I tried to focus on the past because with what seems to be Resident Evil 8, at least from the notes that you read, these chicks have been around since the 1950s. And they all seem to have this like Game of Thrones house vibe going on that kind of make up the umbrella symbol, what it looks like.
Yeah, and the imagery that you see in the trailer, it's a very quick clip, but you see 4 house sigils, and then in the center of this house sigil is the umbrella logo. So, yeah. You were talking about the flower.
The flower. I forget the name, but the actual name, but it's called like the Stairway to Heaven or something like that.
So I have it here. It's the Sonnentrep flower.
Yeah, that thing.
But the like nickname, they give it a Stairway of the Sun.
Stairway to the Sun, that one. Yeah, which if we look at, if I could just bounce back and forth with the theory here, it's relevant, one, because that's where the progenitor virus comes from.
Right.
But strangely enough, if they take it out of Africa and they try to like grow the plants inside a lab, when it fully grows, it doesn't have the progenitor virus, so it has to be like the environment type thing, which is why they built a base around it
Mm-hmm.
in Africa.
Right, which you see in
Um,
Resident Evil 5. Yeah.
yeah, and so I was looking at Lady D's like little wardrobe, and she has this like cluster of flowers that are on her that I think look like this flower from Africa.
I think so. Upon further inspection, because the flowers themselves are very dark.
Yeah,
In comparison to Stereo of the Sun, they're kind of more like an orangey color. Um, However, I do think I've seen quite a few theories here. Some people think that the flower is actually representative of where you shoot a Titan. Because a lot of people
like the
think that
heart. Yeah,
she's yeah, a lot of people think she's maybe a successful, intelligent version of that. I don't subscribe so
I
much to that
disagree.
theory.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
the
either.
tyrants
But
weren't
like,
made till much later on. With Wesker was actually leading the T project.
Yeah,
right. So I don't
exactly.
subscribe to that so much, but I do wonder if that flower is not representative, maybe of the stereo of the sunflower without being the exact one. You know what I mean?
I was just
Uh,
looking at them as like dried up, petrified versions that she has.
oh yeah, that's fair too. And it would make sense because she's very obviously a mutant. She's very much not
Yeah,
human.
Yeah.
like we don't know if she was born with the progenitor virus or got it some other way.
Right, right. They do mention in the trailer, or I'm sorry, in the playthrough, they do mention a ceremony. Perhaps it's something that she went through um, to make her what she is. Um, but to get on track, back on track. So 1966 is actually interesting. So while Spencer was starting the Wesker project, uh, it was Marcus who then discovered this flower. Um, and I guess there was like an expedition in which Dr. Brandon Bailey, Dr. Spencer, Earl Spencer, and Dr. Edward Ashford, um, they go on an expedition and they discover this flower. So these things sort of occur in tandem with each other,
Yeah.
um, which is just interesting fun fact. Anything else that we want to mention about the '60s for our founders here?
I think that was when the time his Spencer's mansion was under construction.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah, I want to say it's 69. 69 is when they
Yeah.
start Umbrella and they start constructing Ashford's base in Antarctica, and then several other bases, throughout the world.
Yeah.
Which, as the open parentheses, as some of you may not know the lore of this is where everything links up from Code Veronica to the first Resident Evil game to even Resident Evil 0 as well. So continue on.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Ashfords are another noble family,
Mm-hmm.
and the mother Veronica was like a genius, and they actually managed to create an embryonic clone of her. And some kind of freak accident happened where it split, and it made like a male version of hers too. And these two kids are our second example of clones,
Mm-hmm.
with Alexia Ashford and Alfred Ashford.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so
And then, so the reason I mentioned the Spencer Mansion is because he hires George Trevor, or Trevor.
mhm.
If when you play Resident Evil 7, you get the Baker family contract, and the company is actually Trevor and Chamberlain, and they're hired to make the shadow puzzle inside the Baker's house. And if you continue to look around the house, you can see that there's like the Arklay Mansion from 1991. So in 1991, 92, that's before the Baker's kids were born.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like some theories that the Bakers were actually involved in Raccoon City somehow.
Yeah. So possible through line with Mr. and Mrs. Baker being involved with Umbrella way before we ever, get to Resident Evil 7. Something to note here is Trevor. He, as you said, helped build Spencer's mansion.
Mm-hmm.
But his wife and daughter were sent to kind of like sent ahead of him to the mansion because I
After.
guess they were gonna, yeah, after it was built, they were gonna like live there. And Umbrella, they like go in through a tunnel system to get to the mansion for some reason. But Umbrella infects them with two strains of the virus. The
Yeah, the
mom
type A
dies.
and the type B.
Yeah.
The mom dies, and then that's the character that we have. Lisa
Yeah.
is the
Yes,
daughter.
yes. And so Lisa, um, she obviously responds well to this virus, but because that happens, they continue experimenting on her. Um, and there's like a whole thing where she finds her parents' graves, even though her dad is technically still alive. She doesn't know that. And what happens? She realizes her mom's dead, right? Without seeing a body. And so she starts collecting faces, specifically women's faces, to give to her mother. Because
Yeah.
the
Which,
virus starts fucking with their heads. So that's a interesting thing. But
Yeah, because George also like he gets on like this like mini house arrest inside the mansion,
mhm,
and finds his gravestone. And one of the nights he sneaks out, even though he's still alive. So it just shows how far ahead Spencer thinks,
mhm. Yeah,
and
that
that he'll
he
say that people are dead even when they're not.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um
Yeah,
can we just say that that was probably one of the most sad parts of that game was Lisa? Like, that
yeah.
entire arc was just
Yeah, there's so many
sad.
moments like that, isn't there? That are just
yeah,
like break your fucking heart.
yeah. And then Lisa's kept secret for like 25 years
Yeah, yeah, until fucking,
until
you
they
know,
show her to like Wesker and Birkin later on.
right. hmm
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah,
but
so
I
exactly.
think at this time, Marcus is working on a brand of the T-virus, and he's using these leeches as part of
mhm,
his experiments for like
yes,
his side. So you got like three different experiments going on. You have the T Veronica project, you have Marcus's, and you have Spencer's.
yes. Spencer is he like is specific in genetics. Um, and that's why he chooses to collect these prodigies and these, you know, young brilliant minds and bring them in and start to like whittle down which would be the best candidate for I guess the virus and whatever else he has planned. Uh, and then yeah, Marcus with the leeches and Ashford has clones.
Yeah, they got
so
clones.
so at this point we're in late 60s, early 70s, and they've already got clones. So let's keep that in mind. Um, a little side note, um there is, I guess they're files, but it's called Wesker's report. And this is occurring, his reports kind of span from 1978 to 1995. um and so I'm assuming it's essentially all of his experiences up until he gets to stars. um but then we get to Resident Evil Zero, which occurs in the summer of 1998. There is a train
Oh,
incident.
well, can we back up for a sec
Okay, yeah.
before you get there?
Mm-hmm.
The reason we keep mentioning the prodigies is because the that training facility that they get,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Spencer puts Marcus in charge of it, and then he also, the Wesker kids and Birkin end up over there,
Yeah.
and they graduate. I mean, at like 16, 17 years old, and they start helping on Spencer's projects. But that academy is actually where we're gonna end up when we get to Resident Evil Zero. Um, yeah, you can see like whenever these prodigies had, I guess they deemed them useless, they would just use them as experiments. So they were
Yeah.
experimenting on these kids and then just dumping them in like the the river into the water plant.
Yeah. Yeah. Which all we're seeing kind of the beginnings of like infecting water systems and, you know, different things like that occurring here. because you can't dump dead bodies into water and, and think that like it's not going to affect the water
Yeah.
that have these fucking parasitic like viruses in them.
It's like, oh, what are we drinking this morning? Oh, zombie water. Lovely.
Yeah, pretty much.
Delicioso. Yeah,
So,
I think that's so as far as part of our theory, I think that's all that's relevant,
right.
right? Because the people involved is one of the main people involved in this theory is Wesker.
Yes.
So it's important to note that, you know, he got hand selected by Spencer along with 13 other people to include Alex Wesker, graduates, and then during the course of that time, they actually utilized the first time they utilized the USS, which is the Umbrella Security Service, and those are like the Hunk squads. In case no one's too familiar with the USS, it's Hunk and his crew, like those type of people. And they use the USS to assassinate Marcus.
Yes.
And Wesker and Birkin are like standing over his body and you watch this video when you play Resident Evil 0. And Birkin takes over the research for Marcus. But the cool thing is he's already done multiple experiments with the leeches, to include the Leech Queen, and she somehow gains his memories and like thinks that she is Marcus, and then is able to mimic his image using a bunch of leeches to emulate his like form.
Yes. So I have some things on that very quickly. So basically, what happens with the Queen leech and the other leeches is that he essentially programs them to not only have collective thinking, but sort of this is the first echoes of like a memory transfer. And that's how the Queen, has Marcus's memories. And then in June of that year, he begins testing the subjects, essentially these leeches, for what's called mimicry Marcus. So he sort of like was already planning, and I think from what I'm seeing, I think that it's because he knew that he was going to be betrayed and killed.
Yeah, because that's like the main theme of Resident Evil is that these guys are searching for immortality.
Yeah,
which is important because as we see in Resident Evil 8, apparently the Dimitrescu's have another way for immortality.
Yeah, they've accomplished this. They've actually got through with it.
Yeah. But that's our another example of cloning, and we have our first instance of like a mind transfer type deal.
Yes, and also sort of like the hive mind collective thinking.
Mind control. So we got mind control, mind transfer, and cloning. Right.
So there are sort of echoes of this and about this in pretty much, let's see here, 1, 2, 3,
it's
4,
the whole series.
5, 6. Yeah, there's like 6 references throughout a bunch of the Resident Evil games that allow for this, like, to know that this is what Marcus was doing. So all this information we're sharing is within the games, obviously in mangas and all that as well.
Yes.
But the bulk of the information actually does come from the games. It's just sort of spread out.
Yeah. So all we're talking about now is just like straight up facts from the lore.
Right.
Exactly.
And we haven't even talked about what it leads to, which is why we're just given the background.
Yeah. So we have the Queen Leech, right? And we can call her Mimicry Marcus because that's essentially what she becomes in Resident Evil 0. She starts attacking Umbrella trains and various.
Yeah, but in the timeline we have the Ashford still.
Right.
And while that's going, like before, because 1998 is where everything fucking goes down. But meanwhile, in the Antarctica base with the Ashfords, the 2 kids, they have this door that they can't get into, and eventually they get into it and they find out the origins of their birth. Right. And they find out that they're clones. And they get real pissed off at their dad and they start experimenting on him. And Alexia actually graduates with a master's degree at like 10 years old. So she's like an exact duplicate of her mother, Veronica.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they experiment on the dad, he turns out to be a failure, and he's the Nosferatu boss that we come across in Code Veronica.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so Alexia actually gets put in charge of that part of Umbrella, or that part of the partnership with Spencer.
Yeah.
And she gets put as like head researcher or whatever, which pisses off Wesker because she's only 10 years old. And she figures out some kind of way where if she goes into this 15-year cryostasis, that it'll like stabilize the T Veronica virus inside of her.
Mm-hmm.
So she injects herself with it, tells her brother Alfred to put her in the cryostasis, and then because she's in that stasis, Alfred takes over that portion for like those 15 years.
Yeah, because we're seeing a lot of interluding timelines. It's the same with Resident Evil 2 and 3, with them happening at the same time as well, I believe.
Yep.
That's throughout. A lot of this stuff is occurring like simultaneously. But I was gonna make mention of Alfred. So because, and this is a little psych thing, right? Because his sister goes into this cryostasis, right? And he's by himself running this part of this base, which is both concentration camp and boot camp.
Yeah, it's also a training facility for the USS later on.
Right. So he ends up developing a split personality where one half is his sister and the other half is obviously him. I don't know. Does he also have, because he's a clone, does he also have the T virus in him? Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, she injects herself with the T Veronica virus and then goes into cryostasis.
Okay.
That's like her whole reasoning, was that it needs to stabilize.
Right. Okay, so he's just a clone and went crazy. Okay, yeah. Cool. Yeah. All right, so that's what's happening
and there. I keep mentioning the USS because they're also a part of the theory. Like Hunk is a part of it.
Yes, for sure, and we're gonna get to that.
We can place the USS involvement. Whether, I don't know if they sent Hunk to assassinate Marcus, but the USS is involved in the assassination of Marcus, and they trained at the Umbrella training facilities, to include the one at Rockford Island in Antarctica.
Yes. So, we have that, and then the sort of beginnings of the mansion incident and sort of Raccoon City as a whole starts. Yeah,
because at that point, Wesker is like pretty much infiltrating everything.
Where was I? Wesker. So Wesker and Sergei, they are tasked to remove the evidence from the mansion, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's go back just a little bit to 1992. In 1992, there is a lot going on. Umbrella has their fingers very much in Raccoon City, through the mayor, Michael Warren. And he starts a huge refurbishment plan, a lot of construction within Raccoon City, one of which is to build a state-of-the-art hospital, and then to rebuild the municipal building, part of which becomes the RPD. And then there's a statue that's built of him within the city hall as well. Mentioning of the Bakers as well. That's when they start, Trevor and Chamberlain start building the sort of underground shadow.
The shadow puzzle.
The shadow puzzle in their fucking backyard. So that's, like we said earlier, that's very interesting because ironically, there's those connections there, all the way back in 1992, and Resident Evil 7 doesn't happen till like 2017. 2017. So possibly Mr. and Mrs. Baker were involved with Umbrella like even before their kids were born. So there's that. Then after that, we come to. Is there anything else that you want to mention that's going on after 1992?
I don't think so for right now.
Yeah. Okay. So cool. So 1998 happens, and this is when everything really starts fucking, flying off the fucking handle. We have this situation with the mansion, and then kind of like the overall issue in Raccoon City. Simultaneous to this, okay, because again, this is all within the same year. There is a graphic novel called Biohazard: The Wicked North Sea, and this is canon, well, semi-canon to the story, but I want to mention it because there is this girl who is with her friend, and they're like leaving their boarding school to go, I guess, on vacation to this Norse island, which is where you first discover about the Beardsleys, which we mentioned earlier. And her father is missing. This girl's father's missing. The character that you're reading the perspective from, his name is Norse. He eventually stumbles upon her father and sees her father turn into what he thinks is a werewolf. So, there's mention also in it of a lab of some sort nearby. And so that's our first, I guess, tie-in from Resident Evil 8 of the werewolves. This it already exists in 1998. So that's an interesting thing. I don't think he obviously turned into a, classic werewolf, but there's definitely some bioweapon situation happening.
Yeah. This entire time in the Spencer estate, they're going through the Tyrant project.
Yes.
And it's I think in about around this time in 1998 where it's in phase 3, and Wesker goes from Umbrella Pharmaceuticals to the Umbrella Intelligence Division.
Mm-hmm.
And Birkin starts his research on G-Virus.
Yes. It is important to note what Wesker is doing. Because it plays into the theory that we'll discuss later. It also shows just how what's the word, conniving Wesker is. Mm-hmm. He's sticking his fingers into so many different pies, but he gets himself into the intelligence agency.
Yeah. And then in Europe, they begin the NE Alpha project, which is implanting a parasite into the Tyrant.
Yes.
So we got mass production of clone Tyrant things going on, and we have a form of mind control with the parasite.
Uh-huh. Yep. So please, take note. Clones and mind control are beginning to be they're beginning to be established here very, very early on.
Yeah, and then it's relevant because Javier Hidalgo,
mm-hmm.
He's approached by a stranger connected with the Ashford family, and Hidalgo's wife is supremely ill, and he's trying to find the cure. And this person suggests that the T-virus could save this woman's life, but it actually puts her in a comatose status, which later on he starts to think, maybe this thing's not helping, and it leads him to learn about the V virus, which later becomes the V complex.
Mm.
That's in 1992, I think.
Yeah.
And then 93, Chief Irons gets put in. He gets established. The other thing I want to mention too is Alicia. There's a reporter. Her name is Alyssa Ashcroft, and she's been reporting for years. And every time she reports something, she's pretty much spot on with some kind of criminal, shady business that's been going on. And we actually get to play as Alyssa in Resident Evil Outbreak. Mm-hmm. And she's relevant in canon because when you flash forward to Resident Evil 7, there's an article written by her relaying the 20 missing people in Louisiana.
Yeah, which you find at the very beginning of the game.
Yep.
Yep. And so obviously, not just because of the name, but she does herself experience some amnesia. If you want to talk about that a little bit, Chris.
Well, no, not her. There's I forget the Asian one. The Asian, you get to play as an Asian character.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like a researcher in the hospital.
Right.
No, not Ada.
No, different Asian woman.
Ada is a super spy, which we know nothing about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
the Lord, there's nothing on Ada.
I forget this girl's name, but she's a player character in Outbreak.
I think I remember her name. Suzuki M. Is that her name?
I don't think so. I think Suzuki M is the spy that wanted to work with Chris.
Oh, okay. All right.
But yeah, she wants to whistleblow on them, and one of the doctors gets a hold of her and experiments on her, and she can't remember. She has like temporary amnesia.
Okay. Keep that in the back of your mind, folks, because it's
mind
important.
altering. Yeah.
Yes, it's important. Okay, so we're back in 1998 where the mansion debacle is occurring. Wesker, quote, dies in that first one. If everybody remembers, he has the Titan, shove his like claw hand through his chest. Yeah. Effectively killing him, right? Quote, killing him in front of Jill and Barry?
And Chris.
And Chris.
I mean, depending on who you play, but like.
I mean, if you save Chris,
right.
Yeah.
But Wesker at this point is, as everybody believes, dead. There is so much that goes on in there in terms of Wesker.
So like in 1998, the Plant 42 is like fully grown.
Mm-hmm.
They call it Dorothy.
Uh-huh.
The Lich Queen has gained the memories of Dr. Marcus, like fully.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Tyrant Project for the T002 and the T11.
Mm-hmm.
Which you come across both of them when you play Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 1.
Mm-hmm.
The article about the plants is written by Alicia Ashcroft. And then at this point, there's a doctor. His name is John Clemens. Mm-hmm. And he's in the Arklay laboratory. But apparently Ada Wong was sent on like her first mission to kind of get into a relationship with him to get information. And one of the passwords in the game is actually John and Ada, and you can see a picture of them together. Mm-hmm. So that's our first instance of Ada Wong being involved. Wesker is there. Wesker is all these key places that we're going to talk about. He's like throughout the game. Mm-hmm. And then STARS is already established. They have like the Alpha team and Bravo team.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time, Billy Cohen is being sentenced to death for his supposed war crimes, which puts him on the train.
Mm-hmm. The train in Resident Evil 0.
Yeah, Resident Evil 0.
Mm-hmm.
And what else happens? The train's called the Ecliptic Express, if I remember.
It is called that.
Yeah. So that's actually happening before Wesker dies? Like just a little bit before Wesker dies.
Yeah, it's actually essentially the same few days. So the incident on the Ecliptic Express is July 23rd to the 24th. And then the first instance at the mansion is July 24th and 25th. So it's like happening at the same time.
Yeah. Because
I do want to make note of something, by the way, really quickly, that there were also multiple experiments for the Tyrant virus as well, because we see the first example of the generous Tyrus put his fist through Wesker, but also I found out that there were multiple Tyrants throughout this, because since the games are happening at the same time, we also see a Tyrant attack Rebecca as well in the game.
Mm-hmm. The proto-Tyrant.
So yeah, exactly. So there were multiple Tyrants going around in the same time, which means multiple experiments that even Wesker wasn't even a part of, possibly.
Well, no, he is absolutely
He's
100% a part of them. Yeah.
He's a part of it, but like not like guiding like some of the experiments. Is what I'm
correct.
saying. It's like part of a
Oh, okay,
theory.
okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's
Okay.
definitely he was in charge of the Tyrant Project.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
by
we got
this time they're in phase 3 when it comes to
yeah,
the time.
because we
Yeah.
got the Tyrant. The 103 series is deemed to be like the best ones, and Sergei, Wesker's rival there, he calls them Ivans. They're like T-103 bodyguards, and they have like these headpieces on them to control them.
Oh, another instance of mind control.
Yeah. But Sergei is actually also sent to the mansion to go get information, which is from the Red Queen, which Resident Evil adapted from the movie. That's like the one thing they took from the movie.
Yep.
But yeah, it has all
Yeah,
the information
exactly.
on Umbrella in the Red Queen, who's an artificial intelligence, and she'll come back into play later. But Sergei and Wesker are both sent there to get. They have a number of missions, and one of them is to get that information.
Right. So we have the mansion situation that's occurring in the summer of 1998, and then in early September, in the early fall, there is Operation Nest Wrecker, which is the first official mission by the USS Umbrella Security Service, which is Hunk and his team, where their mission is to collect the G virus that Birkin is working on.
Yeah.
And then we have Resident Evil Outbreak, which is, the game.
I think just for continuity, when you play through Resident Evil 0, you'll finish with like Billy Cohen and Rebecca. And
Right.
After the whole train incident, you actually Billy gets swept away by like a river, and then when you find him again as Rebecca, you find out he's like on a pile of bones, and that's like all the Prodigy kids that were tested on in this this facility. And you go through it, you end up fighting the Lich Queen, and Billy parts ways. So Billy is reported as deceased in Rebecca's official report. So he's still out there, and she ends up at the mansion, and that's when the whole mansion incidents happen, and it's revealed that Wesker's this double agent, betrays his team, but the Wesker Project W, all of those kids were injected with this prototype virus, and only if you were genetically matched or like, I guess, sufficient enough, it would adapt. And it killed every single one except two of them, which is Alex Wesker and Albert Wesker. And for Albert, it adapted and gave him super strength and speed. And for Alex, it was killing her slowly.
Yeah, very slowly, because she reaches adulthood. But yeah, it is definitely killing her.
Yeah. So he has this whole plan of like, he has a couple of missions he was supposed to do as his double agent, working for a rival company of Umbrella, and one of them was to test the BOW combat, and that's why he sent his STARS team in there, but he didn't think that they were going to win. But he was supposed to gain combat data, which is very important for later on, and then he supposedly kills himself so he can be reborn with superpowers. And then when you play the Umbrella Chronicles, you actually get to fight against like Lisa Trevor. And you get to see a little bit of the rest of what Wesker was doing, and he escapes the explosion due to his super speed.
Right. As that's happening, that's when Nest Wrecker, Hunk and his crew, are trying to get the G virus from Birkin. Birkin, I don't know if you want to get into it, but Birkin does obviously he takes the sample of the G virus, uses it on himself, and from there kind of like hunts down the rest of Hunk's team, to which Hunk is the only survivor of.
He's usually the only survivor, and that's what gave him the nickname the Grim Reaper.
Right. Also important, don't forget that. So side note, Raccoon Trials, which is essentially, trying to hold Umbrella responsible for what occurs in Raccoon City, occurs from 1998 to 2003. But obviously we know that it doesn't stop Umbrella because they keep going. So now we get into Resident Evil 3 Nemesis.
You just skipped Resident Evil 2.
No, I'm going to come back to Resident Evil 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to it. So there's a reason why I'm saying this. So Resident Evil 3...
it happens before. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for the first half of it, the kind of like opening cutscenes and first half of the game is occurring on the 26th of September of 1998 during this whole like Raccoon City fucking chaos. Then Resident Evil 2 is on the 29th to the 30th. And that's where we get the first appearance of Claire and Leon.
Yeah, because while Jill is asleep during her little hibernation session, you know, we got that going on, and like for the next day,
yeah,
she
takes a quick coma for 3 days after the mansion, which I guess is earned, right? After dealing with the mansion, she takes a quick fucking coma. Chris leaves a note in his desk for Claire if she comes looking for him to say that he's gotta. You know, his mission now is to go and get, you know, essentially revenge on Umbrella and get rid of these bioweapons. Yes. Yeah, he's gonna have to punch some boulders. So he leaves a note for her, and she's like, I gotta fucking get out of this city and find my brother. The events of Resident Evil 2 are occurring simultaneous to that. The Resident Evil 2 DLC of The Fourth Survivor, which is about Hunk, is occurring. And then Resident Evil 3, the second half, also is occurring. So this is like over the span of like 4 days.
Yeah. Outbreak is also occurring during that time.
Yep. And then Outbreak is occurring. More bits of Resident Evil, The Umbrella Chronicles is also occurring during this time. So you know, I mentioned before, there is a wealth of information here, lore-wise, that's all occurring simultaneously in a bunch of different games, and spread out across. So let's get into Resident Evil 2. Anything that is you find, you know, relevant for our theory here.
The things that are relevant is that Wesker doesn't approve of using the G virus because it continues to mutate even after the person dies. So Wesker deems it useless.
Yeah.
But it's a different strain originating from the progenitor virus. And William Birkin and Annette Birkin are working on this. And the only thing to really take away from that is that they inject their daughter Sherry with the G virus in like this dormant state. The other thing is that Ada Wong is also there.
Yes.
And her mission is to get the G virus as well. And if you play, I forget what the mission's called, but if you in Umbrella Chronicles, I think you get to play as Ada, and you get to see what happens after she falls off the platform with Leon. She goes back to the Apple Inn to meet up with one of her contacts, and this contact's already dead. And Wesker's on the computer, and he pretty much tells her that he's disappointed in her and that she's a failure, that she's going to make people in the organization really upset. And this is like the first mention of the organization.
Yes, this rival company to Umbrella.
Yeah. So we can place Wesker kind of there, or knowing of the events of Raccoon City, because he had Ada either working with him or for him. And she actually gets a sample of the G virus. And then he unlocks the suitcase, giving her grappling hook, and tells her that, you know, there's a missile coming. And if you don't get out, you're going to fucking die.
To which she obviously does.
She gets out, yeah. And then, so you got Sherry with the G virus, Ada with the G virus, Hunk with the suitcase in it has the G virus and the T virus. And his mission was actually he was sent there by a woman named Christine Henry from France. And his mission was to get the G virus and bring it to her in a little village called Lorraine, France.
So Umbrella is everywhere.
Yeah. And then you had the introduction to one of the Tyrant projects that were mass produced. And so like the Mr. X character that Leon and Claire get to run into, his mission was to kill all the survivors in the police department and get the G sample. I guess simultaneously we had the Nemesis project with the Nemesis implants in the brain,
Hmm.
and his mission was to eliminate all the STARS members.
Right. Right.
And
So
Nikolai was sent there to watch and collect combat data for both those BOWs.
yes.
He had a number of other things to do,
Mm-hmm.
but that was that. We forgot to mention that Sergei successfully downloaded all the information from the Red Queen and at the mansion
Mm-hmm.
before Wesker can get to it. So Wesker is pretty pissed off, and he like vows revenge on the Red Queen.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gonna get brought up later because
Mm-hmm.
he does get in contact with the Red Queen again.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what's occurring in that early from summer to fall of 1998. Then we have events of Resident Evil Survivor, which occurs in November of 1998. This is specifically on Sheena Island. Um, is there anything important in that date?
Yeah, you get to play as Ark Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he was sent there by Leon, which I don't really know where that fits. I guess Leon was in training with U.S. Stratcom at this time after his events of Raccoon City, and
Mm-hmm.
sends him over there. You come in contact with a different Tyrant project, the Hypnos Tyrant,
Mm-hmm.
and the only thing I really kind of took from that was that you had these like creatures that you fought called the Undertakers, and they're like they look like little hunks, and they're pretty small, and they're fragile, and they're actually weaker than a zombie or a human. And to make up for this, they kind of hunt in packs, and they can utilize weapons, and they're usually led by one human person. And the person in the game was codenamed Hank.
Right.
But
Which.
yeah, there might
Got.
be a parallel between like Hunk and Hank.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's important because those little Undertaker guys are actually all clones, and they could be mass produced, which is why they send them on these A+ missions. Because if they die, they're just replaceable. So we have another instance of cloning.
Yeah. So yeah, super important because of that, because of the cloning. And then we come to Code Veronica. This is December 1998, and these are all the events that occur in Rockford Island and the outbreak in Antarctica. So yeah, we've talked a bit about Code Veronica already, but in the timeline, it's in December 1998. Um,
Well, that's when
and
like Claire gets there.
yeah. And she's in search still for her brother
Hmm.
at this point. I believe it's at the end of Code Veronica, right? That he's like, he finds her, right?
Yeah, it's like the ending half.
Yeah. Okay. So then there is, and we mentioned Javier before. This is an incident that occurs in South America in 2002. It's called Resident Evil: The Dark Side Chronicles. Um,
I think it's important to mention that in 2000,
mm.
the HCF was created. Uh,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
yeah, the HCF and was it the Hive
The
Control
Hive.
Force?
I am going to tell
Capture
you
Force?
right
Hive.
now. Hold on. Are you going to give me what the acronym is? Let's see. It does not. It just says HCF.
I think it's like Hive Capture Force.
Right.
Anyway, at this time, they get established,
Mhm.
but the connections is also out there. And Wesker ends up working for HCF, and then in 2004 he takes over it. But in 2000, the connections works in conjunction with HCF to start a revolutionary new virus called mold, which is what occurs in Resident Evil 7.
Yes.
So they started working on it in 2013. So the connections is actually Ada works for them, but she's also like this like double, triple, quadruple secret agent. We don't actually know, but she's listed as working for them, but also working with Wesker, who's also part of the HCF.
Right. So just for the specifics on that, Wesker was hired to acquire the T Veronica virus for the HCF, and retrieve a sample of Alfred and Alexia Ashford.
Yeah, which we see the fruitions of what happens on the island.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I think the important thing is that that's when we find out about the clones.
Mm-hmm.
Wesker ultimately doesn't get the T. Veronica strain originally, but he eventually does because Steve's body is still intact and he gets to extract the T. Veronica virus from his cells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
So we can place Wesker at Antarctica. We could also place Honk there because they actually Alfred Ashford hired the USS to transport this like top secret crate. And we find that out through one of Hunk's letters because he was complaining that one, that was an improper use of the USS, and two, that he's never going to do that again because it creates a risk to his men. He needs to know what's inside the cargo. So we
Mm-hmm.
can place Hunk on Antarctica as well. That's also where Hunk trained. Some of his training was at Antarctica.
Yes. So, um, yeah, just to reiterate, according to an R&D report, HCF participated with technical cooperation in the project that led to the creation of Evelyn. Um, this is we don't know if Wesker knew about the mold yet, or if he participated in, helping to get that going, but we do know it is because of the HCF that the mold project is even started.
We can assume because he's part of intelligence programs and
Hmm.
the man has eyes everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's safe to assume that he does. Um,
Yeah. Also, a side note of fact that like people didn't think that the mold had anything to do with the main storyline of Resident
Yeah.
Evil. Clearly, it did because we're seeing in a lot of the notes, we see a lot of the lore, and if people, I hate to say this, if people would just like research carefully,
yeah,
then they would
there's
see
this
it all
fabulous thing
connects.
called the internet.
I don't think people
Yeah,
want to,
honestly,
when they're like killing
Google is a
zombies, they don't want to
thing.
read the fucking diary entries and the notes.
Yeah, they're like, I just want
I just want to kill.
to pew pew. Okay, so 2003.
Oh,
Okay,
Jesus
so
Christ. I just want to pew pew. Listen, that's gonna
yes.
be the theme of
Okay,
today's
so
podcast.
You gotta let
so
me bang, man. I just want to bang.
I just want to bang with my bros. Okay, so
Bang, bros.
in
Oh, God.
2003, in February 2003. Okay, now this is important, y'all, because of setting. There is what's called Biohazard Umbrella Chronicles Prelude to the Fall. This takes
Did we
place.
skip 2002?
Oh, did we? Oh, we did.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry, y'all. Strike what I just said. Resident Evil Dead Aim occurs in September 2002. There is an outbreak at Spencer Rain and the Atlantic facility that
Yeah,
occurs.
it's our first instance with Leon Kennedy and Jack Krauser.
Mm-hmm.
They go there to get the sacred snake leader Javier Hidalgo, which we talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
His wife is now partly infected with the T. Veronica virus,
Yes.
which hence leads him to creating the V complex. And long story short, during their final battle, um, it is shown that Albert Wesker is watching over the battle and observes that Krauser's like abilities might be useful to him in the future. So we can place Wesker there as well.
Wesker is fucking everywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Collecting all the viruses.
Honestly, though, I wouldn't be surprised if he were listening
right.
right now.
Hey. Okay. So after that, that's when we have Prelude to the Fall, which is a manga. Um,
Manga.
Sorry. That occurs in Caucasus,
It's
Russia.
like one of the most important parts of the theory.
Yes. This occurs in Russia, which we see in Resident Evil 8 that it's occurring in Slavic, maybe that, Eastern Europe.
Bumblefuck Transylvania. Yeah.
Yeah, Eastern European area. So these are all pretty connected. But basically, Jill and Chris go here to investigate a Russian village, which is the Caucasus mountain region of Russia, where there are rumors spread of a wolf monster going around the village. There's also zombies and other kinds of mutants that are there.
But they learn about this through the little girl Anna.
Yes. Yeah. They learn about this through Anna, and she tells them what happened, that the village was attacked by a wolf, and whoever the wolf attacked was transformed into zombies. Her parents die because of this. Chris and Jill, they are investigating, and are ambushed by zombies and stuff, but they, fucking make it out.
Well, they actually hide inside a refrigerator, and they let Chris kind of handle it.
Oh.
Okay. So Jill and Anna hide inside a refrigerator, and then you can hear the voice of someone commending Chris on his ingenious display of chemistry. Lower that. And it's none other than Albert Wesker. So now Albert Wesker is placed in Russia as well, and they deduce that somewhere near the village there has to be another bioweapons complex. And they find one 3 kilometers away from the village. I think it's underneath an oil refinery. But Wesker gets there, and he finally comes face to face with his rival Sergei, and he has to defeat Sergei and the 2 Ivan tyrants, which he does thanks to his new superpowers. And then he comes in contact again with the Red Queen, and he gets to download all of Umbrella's files onto one disk.
Yeah, which is, he gets all that information. When it comes to the experiments, when it comes to clones, when it comes to mind control, he gets all of that. Yes. Also, this is the first display of hunters as well, I think. This is when you see them.
No, you see them in Resident Evil. First one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're actually called the DNA hunters. They actually have a specific purpose.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah, so that is that.
Yeah, Wesker, he takes that information and he hands all of Umbrella archives over in the Raccoon trials. That ultimately gets Umbrella shut down.
Right.
And
right.
that causes Oswald Spencer to go into hiding.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's what happens there. And you see bits of this throughout Wesker's extra report, the Umbrella Chronicles, the chapters of Umbrella's End, Dark Legacy. That's all throughout February 2003. And then in the spring of 2004 is the Terra Grigia panic, which is the beginning of Resident Evil Revelations.
Yeah.
I
guess
is
the
there
only thing important to take away from Terra Grigia, I guess so. It was launched by Veltro, or to Veltro, whatever the fuck. It was actually used as an advertisement scheme where they launched an attack and then wanted to sell people the cure.
Yeah.
And these people actually ended up going on to make a new strain of the T virus called the T Abyss virus. The important thing to take away from the attack of that time is that it kills the parents of Natalia Korda. And because of her traumatic experience, she no longer experiences fear because of it.
Right. This is important. Don't forget that. Also, this is a time when there's a lot fucking going on here, actually.
We can probably just skip to Resident Evil 4 from there.
Right. Exactly. So Resident Evil 4, this is in the autumn of 2004, and this is when the president's daughter is abducted.
Yeah, it's abducted because Krauser and Wesker actually go in as double agents to be friends with Osmond Sadler. Why? Because Wesker wants the Plaga virus.
Yes.
And he ultimately double crosses him, whatever. But Sadler sends Krauser to go get Ashley Graham, the president's daughter, which we later find out that Wesker sends Ada to infiltrate Sadler's territory, and he's watching Ada the entire time. Like the entire time, Leon is in the village, and then he gets attacked by those the locals of the village, and the bell starts ringing in the church. It's actually Ada who starts ringing the bell.
Yeah, to save Leon.
Yeah. But she's in contact with Wesker the entire time, so we can place Wesker in Spain.
Yeah.
I mean, we can place Wesker everywhere, but it is what it is.
No, but it is important because.
But that's like our evidence of him being there. Yeah.
Yeah. So whilst the events of Resident Evil 4 are going on, Revelations is taking place, right? So you have Terra Grigia that occurs. Natalia no longer feels fear, and then
I think Revelations takes place 2005, so the year after Resident Evil 4 takes place.
Yes, no, but there are events within Revelations with Terra Grigia that occurs in spring.
Oh yeah, with the boats. Okay. Yeah.
Right. And then we come to the main part of the game, which is in 2005, on Queen's Zenobia, which is the ship that you're on. And the events there occur. Also simultaneously in Rochester, there's an incident that involves Rebecca Chambers. Then is there anything else you want to mention about Resident Evil 4 or Revelations?
Yeah, so I always felt like I was the only one that played Revelations. But it has some interesting stuff. So we get to see where like Leon and Ada meet back up. And Leon knows of Wesker. He's like, "Oh, you're working for Wesker." He's like the only character in the game that hasn't actually met Wesker, but he knows of him.
Right.
And Ada's like zipping around with her, her grappling hook. But she makes it out. Leon makes it out. Ada helps Leon and them survive by helping them kill Krauser, do a couple of other things. Wesker keeps telling Ada to kill Leon, and she never does.
Yeah.
So we can assume that she genuinely has feelings for him in her weird way.
Yeah.
But we can place Ada there because Ada, Hunk, and Wesker are like the main parts of my theory. But yeah, they had this like Las Plagas thing going on. They had this like little cult. It got taken over by Salazar and his like crusade, the little midget dude.
Yeah.
And then the little midget dude. And then like Resident Evil Revelations happens on the boat, and they're there to investigate like Veltro. And Parker and Jill go on the ship, and then Chris and his new partner Jessica go to find her. And long story short, at this point, Tricell is like established, and it's like an amalgamation of a bunch of different companies, and they also buy out Will Pharma, and that's how they get a sample of the G virus. But at the end of the game, you figure out that the T Abyss virus makes it out because Jessica has a sample. And then she goes on to have this report with Excella, who is the president of Tricell, who is working with Albert Wesker.
Yes.
So Wesker now has the T Abyss virus as well.
Right. So then there is Resident Evil Degeneration, which...
And Jessica's still alive.
Yes, and Jessica's still alive. Jessica's not dead. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're still alive.
Yeah. So they're still alive. Degeneration happens, and there is several bioterror attacks that occur. One in India, one in Harvardville Airport, and then another one in the Air Dome Laboratory. So several incidents happen all at once there. Then Resident Evil 5 happens. Lost in Nightmares, I believe, is the DLC.
Yeah.
And that's the raid on Spencer Estate. This occurs in 2006. And it's important because this is where Wesker finally finds Spencer and kills him.
Yeah, well, Spencer reveals that he's part of the Project W, Wesker Children, And Spencer specifically says, out of all the 13 children, only one survived, you, which is not true because we have Alex Wesker. The reason he doesn't mention Alex Wesker is because she has pretty much defected away from Spencer, and she was put in charge of another project to. Well, he wanted her to continue the T-virus tests, but she realized that the body is always going to deteriorate, so she started developing a different kind of form of immortality in which she started to experiment with like mind transfer. But Alex Wesker is still out there, so 2 of the Wesker children are still alive, and Spencer kind of reveals his plan to Albert. Albert figured out where he was with his connections with the intelligence division, and ultimately puts his fist through Spencer. And then that's when like Jill and Chris show up. They have a cool fight, and Jill tackles Wesker right before he kills Chris, because he was going to.
Wesker steady beating Chris's ass.
Oh man, every time. But she tackles him, and they fall out the window. And the BSAA leads this search for a couple of months, and they can't find her or Wesker, and she's officially pronounced dead. And they even have like a gravestone for her. But while they're missing, Wesker is actually doing experiments on her, and he finds out that she has powerful antibodies due to her being in contact with the T-virus, the Nemesis project. So yeah, it gives her strength and stuff like that in like increments, but it also allowed for her to be brainwashed and influenced by Wesker and I think Irving. He's working with as well.
Yeah.
And they send her on a couple of missions against her will. And it's revealed later on that even though she's doing it against her will, she was very aware of what's happening.
Yeah, she was watching herself commit all these, atrocities, for lack of a better word. And then the event. So I'm going to get back to it, right? But simultaneous to Resident Evil 5, there is Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, which is going to come out as a movie, an animated movie on Netflix. The trailer looks amazing. But it's a terror attack that is occurring on the White House, and it is going to feature Claire and Leon. Yeah. So that's happening. Then there is this little, they're like little side things I guess you can discover, but something called Experience Kijuju, which is a blog written by a man named Adam, and it's supposed to be sort of like the events before Resident Evil 5 occur. When you're in Africa and you see all the infected and all the events of that occurring, you kind of get to see what leads up to that. There's also the BSAA remote desktop, which is another report that sort of shows you how the BSAA gets involved with what happens in Africa. Then Resident Evil, the main game, and something called Desperate Escape occur. This is in March 2009. And, anything important in Resident Evil 5?
Well, in 2007, apparently Blue Umbrella is established, also known as Umbrella Co.
Right. Which we don't trust.
Apparently are this like new anti-terrorism private military. So I guess they're trying to rebrand, but I don't buy it. And there's like really good reason that we're going to get to why I don't buy it. So that apparently in 2007, Blue Umbrella has been established. So 10 years before Resident Evil 7. But Resident Evil 5, so Chris teams up with Sheva, but before he teams up with Sheva, he is, there's a person named, I think her name is Suzuki M, who actually requests to be his partner, and he turns her down because she has no actual field experience. And so he goes with Sheva instead, but it turns out to be revealed that Suzuki M is a double agent that infiltrated the BSAA.
Yeah, so good instincts on Chris to not take her on, because she probably would have sabotaged the mission.
Yeah. But it's there where they actually come in contact with the Stairway to the Sun, which is the originator of the progenitor virus. Yep, the flowers. And they come in contact with Wesker, who is revealed to not be dead, and is mind controlling Jill, and they have a fun little fight.
I have a quick theory about the flowers. Quick little theory. So in the space in which they kind of like built around these flowers, there's like a little hole where sunlight is coming through. And you know how when they removed the flower to try to grow in a lab, it lost the progenitor virus, right? I'm thinking that what actually keeps the progenitor virus going is less about environment and more about it being a carnivorous plant.
Yeah, I also think it has to do with like blood, something with blood, because I think they threw people down there.
Right, as a part of like a ritual. They would throw people's bodies down there, and so I think the plants would soak up the blood, and then that's what fed the progenitor virus within it.
Yeah, it like mutated in the plant.
Yes, so I think that's what, that's my little theory about the flowers. But back on track.
Yeah, no, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually you get to rescue Jill by taking the thing off of her, and then Wesker reveals his Ouroboros plan. Ends up killing Excella Gion, and then is ultimately killed by 2 rocket launchers with Chris and Sheva shoot him.
Right, which we
apparently
don't buy.
I don't.
But
buy
apparently,
it, but, okay.
Wesker's dead again.
So he's dead. We could just say he's dead, right? He died in Resident Evil 5. Cool.
Right. Now, Resident Evil Revelations occurs on Sejam Island. Yes, I'm sorry. Revelations 2 occurs on Sejam Island. There's the main game and Claire's episodes, and then I guess it's a DLC, but the extra episodes called The Struggle, which is about what's her Moira, I believe is her name, which is Barry's daughter.
Yeah. Well, 1 year before that, Neo Umbrella is established by Carla Radames, and she takes she's part of this group called the Family.
Yes, so remember that because we're gonna come back to her.
Yeah, the Family is also indicative of Resident Evil 7, but I digress.
Correct.
Yeah, it's
the same thing.
Absolutely. That's through line for us too. So Revelations 2 happens, or part of that happens, right? Simultaneously, Resident Evil Damnation is occurring, which is the start of the East Slavic Civil War. We're gonna come back to that. Then the rest of Revelations 2 occurs, and this is the extra episode of The Struggle, Little Miss, and the Barry's episodes. Let's talk about the importance of Revelations 2.
The most important thing is you come in contact with a second Wesker,
Alex Wesker,
who claims to be the Overseer. Long story short, they get betrayed by someone in TerraSave, which is what the group that Claire is a part of. And she meets up with Moira. Well, does she meet up with Moira? I think she meets up with Moira, and they kind of work together to get out. And so what's going on the island is that Alex is developing this T Phobos virus, which only works on people that don't have any fear. So Natalia is the prime candidate for this experiment to go on, which takes a 6-month incubation period, in which it takes time for the virus to take hold, and then she can digitally download her consciousness onto a computer and then transfer that into whoever the fuck she wants, and in this case, Natalia.
Right. Now, let's just quick reminder, because we've given a lot of information so far. Natalia is the little girl whose parents died on Terra Grigia.
Yep.
And because of the PTSD, this little girl no longer feels fear, making her the perfect candidate for Alex Wesker's plans. When Barry and Natalia actually discover Alex, she is mutated because of the I believe it was the original virus that Spencer put into her.
So it's like 6 months prior, Claire and Moira close in on her, and it's revealed that she is Alex Wesker's like sister, and that they've been in contact. And Albert Wesker's sister, and they've been in contact. And Alex Wesker is a big fan of Franz Kafka, and all of the chapters in Revelation 2 are named after Kafka like stories. And the most important chapter is chapter 4, which is called Metamorphosis, one of his most famous books. And it reveals her whole plan of mind transfer. But when they close in on her, she actually shoots herself in the face. But she doesn't die. She doesn't die from it because of her prototype virus. And then when she comes in contact 6 months later with Natalia, she gets to see like the mind transfer thing worked, and it kind of freaked her out. And Barry ultimately ends up killing Alex Wesker. But this dark Natalia is living inside this little girl, and it's revealed through either one of the endings. You can get the bad ending or the good ending, and both the endings, Dark Natalia takes over. So Alex Wesker is literally taking over this little girl's mind.
Yes. So my favorite ending, because I just think cinematically, story-wise, it's really cool. You see Claire driving with a present in her car. She's driving to Barry's house. You go to Barry's house, and Moira and Barry are calling for Natalia to come downstairs. And then the camera goes to Natalia, and Natalia is sitting on her bed reading Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. And there's like strewn about newspapers about outbreaks occurring and like bioterror attacks happening. And then it does a close up on her mouth, and suddenly she smiles. And it's this indication of Dark Natalia taking over. Dark Natalia being Alex Wesker. So we've got official confirmation of successful mind transfer occurring. So remember that.
There's still a Wesker out there.
Yes, there's still a Wesker running around out there as a little girl. So creepy. So anyway.
No, I can't. I'm sorry. It's just where I draw
right?
the line.
They're fucking scary, dude. Okay. So then we have Las Plagas, organisms of war, as it's called. And these are the reports discovered that during the East Slavic Civil War, we're back in Eastern Europe, the Las Plagas virus, right, was used on soldiers on both sides. But the thing with Las Plagas is that, like, yes, it gives abilities that could win a war, right? But they lose control of their minds, and they end up turning against each other. You find out that the president, she essentially purposely allowed for this to happen. And there's some little events that occur there, but you see the Las Plagas successfully used, in that. That's during 2011, 2012. Simultaneously, and now we mentioned her before, Dr. Carla Radamus. She is in Marhawa, which is an Eastern Asian area. And she purposely infects an entire school and, obviously the surrounding area with the C virus. This is her first experiments of the C virus. A lot of people die. We'll come back to the C virus.
Which, by the way, I just want to have a little open insert. I had like a tiny, tiny theory on what these viruses and what the C virus in particular could represent.
Yes.
So, in psychology, there's something known as CPTSD, complex PTSD, where a lot of these acronyms for PTSD for different, I'm going to call them viruses and disorders, actually exist. So it could be kind of the Capcom's way of saying and handling certain mental disorders within the game. That's just my own little theory.
I mean, why not? Why not?
So that's just a little side note that I had, but that I thought I'd bring into the
mix.
mix.
Yeah, no, of course. Cool. So simultaneously to all that happening in 2012, there is what's called Umbrella Corp's The Experiment.
Yes, this is like the main part of the theory.
Yes. Do you want to say it, or do you want me to say it?
It happens in like 2012, which is 2 years after Resident Evil 5, where Albert Wesker's dead. We've killed him, right, with 2 rocket launchers.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening in Umbrella Corps, whether you like the game or not, it's canon. So it's important, and the most important part happens in the experiment. It's like a single player. It's the single player mode,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a couple of known members of the Umbrella Corps. You have the Umbrella Corps commander. You got Beatrice Bertrand, Honker, Abraham Jackson, and the test subject 3 Alpha 7. And so Umbrella Corp is pretty much doing its mercenary trials for the effectiveness of CQBZ on bioorganic weapons, which is what the USS uses, CQBZ. It's like close quarters combat battle zone.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, what happens is during the experiment, you're put through by this guy named Abraham Jackson, and he is putting you through all these like different levels. But the most important things happen before level selection and after you complete the level. There's like little stories that are happening. And the story that's happening is that they have a bunch of other test subjects and none of them ever make it. So 3 Alpha 7 is making it, and it's kind of impressive. And because he's making it so far, it gets the attention of a higher up in the company, the company commander, the Umbrella Corps commander, who remains anonymous, and nobody knows who he is, but apparently he has a bunch of power. And as you progress, eventually Abraham gets suspicious of this higher up who he's never heard of, and he begins to wonder who he is. And he's watching all these experiments go down with Abraham, and he makes it very clear that he's the reason, and he's responsible for these experiments going on in the first place. He seems more interested in 3 Alpha 7 than the bioweapons itself. And the way he talks about all these places that he gets to go to is almost like he's been there. And the places you get to go to is an Umbrella facility. You get to go to Raccoon City. You get to go to the Spanish village. You get to go to Antarctica. And the only person who's been to all these places is Wesker.
Let's make a quick note, just so that this is clear. Quick note that this experiment is putting this this person through simulations of each of these environments with the bioweapons that occurred within them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And each level has like a distinct name, which also tells a story. And you have specific missions like cleaning house, information gathering, tissue gathering, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And you get like different loadouts for each mission. But when this guy gets suspicious of this higher up, he actually gets a strain of his hair. And he goes to do a DNA test. But before that DNA test can go through, he goes missing. And the person running the experiments gets replaced by Beatrice Bertrand, who gets called back from her vacation. And she's pretty disgruntled. She doesn't care if this guy lives or dies. Mm-hmm. But as he continues to succeed, this company promises her like a triple in her salary, a bonus, all this other stuff. So she kind of becomes invested in 3 Alpha 7 succeeding. Mm-hmm. And he keeps succeeding, and then eventually she gets the order from higher ups that her mission is to make sure that 3 Alpha 7 dies in these experiments, and he doesn't.
Yes.
Which starts leading to rumors that she's like, "Who are you?" And she starts reporting that he has enhanced combat ability that is very similar to USS soldiers, aka Hunk. Mm-hmm. And she starts to wonder that if this is in fact the Grim Reaper himself going through these experiments.
Yes, the Grim Reaper being Hunk. That's the nickname that he was given.
Yeah, and so she fails her mission and he passes, and so she gets replaced by an unnamed person who's running the experiment. Mm-hmm. And his mission is to give him a 0% survival rate mission, which you succeed, and then they officially name him the new Grim Reaper.
Yes.
During the course of this, they perfect a couple of anti-BLW weapons. And the level names, like I mentioned before, One of the level names is called the village where it all started, and he kind of tells you like, hey, this village is where that organization got started.
Yeah, I mean, he could just be hiding, sort of similar to how Spencer did, and just like working from behind the
Yeah.
scenes.
It's supposed to be implied that the Umbrella Company commander is Albert Wesker. So this person watching these experiments go down, the person who's responsible for the experiments, the person who allows the simulations to take place and gives like very detailed information on the locations is supposedly supposed to be Wesker.
Right.
And
So
it's important because like they're developing anti-BOW weapons, which is also the purpose for Blue Umbrella. They create anti-BOW weapons, which makes me think that this is one and the same company. Like I don't trust Blue Umbrella at all.
yeah. Also, important note about the experiments, right, is that you can play where you sort of level up in skills of characters that you've played before. So Chris, Claire, Jill, Leon, any of the Resident Evil characters, you can play them.
That's actually in the raid mode for Revelations 2, which I was going to mention right
I'm
after
sorry.
this.
I thought that was the experiment.
No,
Okay.
so the raid mode is actually ran by the Red Queen Alpha AI, which is obtained by the Overseer, which is Alex Wesker. And you get to play as this character that they call Cypher or Anonymous, and he's pretty much just a character model, like a blank. He looks like a bunch of lines and stuff, right? Like a grid.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about this is that this is an AI simulation that puts you through a bunch of different things. And during your course, you can pick different characters. So you can pick, let's say, Leon Kennedy, right? And as you play as Leon Kennedy and you level up, you unlock more of his abilities. You learn pretty much how to be Leon. And you can do this with any number of characters, to include like Natalia, Alex Wesker, Albert Wesker. You can be Hunk. You can be like all these different people. And then you can, at a certain level, I think it's called inherit, and you can inherit an ability from someone else. So if you wanted to inherit, I don't know, let's say Wesker's like Super Punch onto Cypher, you could do that.
Yeah.
So the thing that I'm thinking about is that Alex Wesker is creating this digitized consciousness. And if she's using the AI to teach the AI how to be these different people, then essentially she has the digital consciousness of all these people. And then she can then transfer that consciousness into anybody she wants.
Right. Into clones, into existing people. The point is that those skills, those behaviors can all be transferred into a body.
Which if you think about it, the multiplayers for Resident Evil Verse and Resistance make sense, because that would go with that theory as well of transfer of data to different characters.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah,
very cool.
So that's like a heavy part of my theory is the Umbrella Corporations mixed with raid mode for Revelations is that they're teaching this computer to be whoever, and then she can transfer that person into whoever she wants or whatever she wants.
Right.
So
and
essentially, if they wanted to
already.
teach, if she wanted to teach the computer how to be Wesker, for example, Albert Wesker, she can get his consciousness and then bring him back with the computer.
Right. And download it onto a clone or into a body or whatever. So that's everything to do with the experiment, and a little bit of thoughts on that. And then we have Resident Evil 6.
Yeah. It's left unconclusive as to what happens to 3 Alpha 7.
Yeah, so we don't know. We don't know who this fucking new Grim Reaper is, but he's fucking chilling. Or maybe not chilling. Maybe he is dead. We don't know. But
they can't kill that guy.
No, they can't. They tried. They gave him a 0% survival rate.
The reason they wanted him to die is because they had sponsors that are invested in BOWs, and they're trying to show off the capabilities of these BOWs. And if they're killed by one dude, they're not going to buy anything.
Right.
So they pretty much gave 3 Alpha 7 the order to like, bro, all you have to do is die, and he didn't.
And he just won't die. So so now we get into Resident Evil 6, right? So Chris's chapter 2 and then Jake chapter 1 and 2 is occurring in the winter of 2012 in the Adonian Civil War. Yes. There is things also simultaneously occurring in the experiment, which we mentioned earlier, during this time. And then we get into Resident Evil 6, the Tall Oaks bioterror incident that has Ada and Leon. And then, everybody else is in the rest of the game. So Chris, Jake, Ada, Leon, the whole crew there. That's occurring in the Lanxiang bioterror incident. So we have several, incidents that are spanning across the whole of Resident Evil 6. To which our protagonist and kind of an antagonist is in. But there are important notes in this. Do you want to explain?
Yeah. So it's revealed that Sherry Birkin is still alive, and she's working for the U.S. government. They're using her because of her G virus inside her. It helps her regenerate. She comes in contact with Jake, who later on is revealed to be Albert Wesker's biological son. And apparently, when Wesker was in the army, he had relations with a female who was unnamed, and this female went back to her country and gave birth to Jake, unbeknownst to Wesker, which we can assume he already knows because he knows everything.
It's true. He's got eyes everywhere.
Jake's important because he has the anti-C-type antibodies in him. Mm-hmm. And so they want him alive so they can take it out of him. Meanwhile, Clara and her C-type experiment with Simmons apparently is in love with Ada, so we can place Ada back into the story. Mm-hmm. And he pretty much wants Ada to love him back, but she doesn't. So what happens is that Clara injects herself with the C-type, and she goes into this chrysalid stasis, and then is reborn as an identical clone to Ada Wong. And Simmons pretty much manufactures her mind to give her all of her intelligence, all her skills. But Clara is still in there somewhere, and she resurfaces and wants revenge on Simmons. And so she starts posing as Ada with the blue dress. Mm-hmm. And in one of the encounters with Chris, she kills all of Chris's men, which causes him to have this momentary PTSD of amnesia. Mm-hmm. Which he wakes up in a hospital, doesn't remember anything, but he feels this serious sense of guilt, and then it goes missing. And it takes 6 months for Pierce to track him down and remind him of who he is. And I think it's interesting that 6 months is the time period that it took to find him, because it takes 6 months for the mind transfer technique to work on Natalia. Mm-hmm. And we know that the T-Phobos doesn't work on anybody that has fear. And throughout our experience with Chris, no matter what's in front of him, he has no fear.
Yeah, none whatsoever. Multiple times guns put in front of his face, ready to shoot him, and he does not blink. So we are thinking perhaps during his time at that hospital when he was knocked out, maybe there was some Umbrella spies who, came through and injected Chris with the T-Phobos, and then you have that 6 months of amnesia.
Raven's awake.
For this mind transfer possibly to occur. So let's hold on to that. Piers, which is one of Chris's partners, manages to break through to Chris and get him back on track and bring him to Lanxiang, where everybody's stories kind of collide. Chris and Leon meet up. They fight because Chris is like, I'm going to get fucking revenge on who he thinks is Ada for killing his whole team, right? And then Leon is the one to reveal to him, like, hey, that's not Ada. In fact, it's Carla, and she's, trying to...
Oh, Carla. I kept calling her Clara.
It's Carla, sorry. Yeah, it's Carla. I should have corrected you. I didn't even think about it. But yeah, that is actually Carla, and that she is trying to release this C virus throughout the world. Now,
which she does. So they get a hold of Sherry and Jake, and through the experiments that they run on her, she's able to make the advanced C-type virus.
Right. And just to clarify, C virus is essentially a cloning virus. It's what she's injected with and how she becomes Ada. Physically, mentally, behaviorally, she becomes Ada, right? Mm-hmm. So those are all very important things to note for when we get into our theory craft. There is a moment where Chris meets up with Jake and reveals to Jake that not only does he know Wesker, his father, he killed Wesker, which obviously we talked about having suspicions if he's really dead or not. Jake is like, what the fuck? And goes to like kill Chris. He like raises up his gun, but they're like in a pretty shitty situation where they should probably put their qualms aside and fucking survive. Right. So they end up doing that, where Jake, doesn't kill Chris. There are things that do occur with Chris and his partner, that are, I guess they're relevant, but they're not that relevant. What's more relevant is seeing Jake and his abilities in action, where he goes against, I forgot what the bioweapon is called, but
Ustanak.
That, yes. And he's out there fucking hand-to-hand combat fighting this fucking thing. And it's when you see it, it's very reminiscent of Wesker. So you're like, oh yeah, that's definitely Wesker's son, And then I believe there's like I don't know if it's a secret ending or whatever, but you see that Jake is still working as a mercenary.
It is a secret ending. You have to beat the game with every character.
Yes. Okay. So it's secret ending. And you see that not only is he alive and pretty much doing well, he's still a mercenary, and he is actually in repayment of apples. He is fighting the C virus. There's another Resident Evil Umbrella Corps, the multiplayer aspect. There are experiments being run with groups of 4.
I think so. What at the ending with Chris and Pierce actually injects himself with the C type, and it allows him to like transform and shoot lightning at the Chaos monster.
Yeah, the house monster.
Yeah, I think it's Chaos. It's supposed to be Chaos from like Greek or whatever, but we can call it House or Chaos or whatever.
Oh, okay. Well, either way.
Yeah. Ada actually comes in contact with Carla and kills her, and then goes off to destroy a number of her experiments as well. She also helps them kill Simmons, who Carla injects with the C-type virus too. And so Ada's still alive. Mm-hmm. They let her go because she helped. I've seen some theories that like because Pierce had the C-type, that he could possibly transform into whoever the fuck he wants to, but I'm pretty sure he blew up in that explosion underwater.
Yeah, when he does the lightning to the monster, it also blows up the facility.
Well, the facility was already gonna blow up.
It was in self-destruct mode, right?
Yeah.
As is Umbrella's MO. Then there's a manga, right, that comes out called Biohazard Heavenly Island. And really the most important thing is that there is a creature that survives and is killing things as just a head.
Yeah, they blow her up and her head survives, and she can still survive with just a head and kill things.
Yeah, so also lending credence to the possibility of the probability of Wesker not being dead.
Right, because if she could survive with just a head.
Right. But we'll get to that in the theory craft. Anyway, then there is Resident Evil Vendetta, which is a movie. There is an incident at this is with Chris, Leon, and Rebecca, by the way, this movie. There's an incident with at Kerataro Mansion, I believe is how you say it. Alexander Institute of Biotech, which is where Rebecca works. The Great Lakes murder, and then the New York City bioterror attack. It's really, the importance of it is seeing that Rebecca makes a what do you call, a vaccine for this version of the virus.
The A virus.
The A virus,
Yeah,
yeah.
this A virus can control the zombies.
Right, it can mind control zombies. So what you see towards the end of the movie is that the antagonist of the film releases, a virus into into the city of New York. People turn into zombies. Attacks start happening, but he can control them via this virus, which is interesting. But then Rebecca in time has made a vaccine that cures all of New York. It's a really great movie. Go watch it if you haven't seen it. And then we come to Resident Evil 7, or like in terms of timeline, October 2014. What we see in the DLC of Daughters is the Dulve incident, which is Mia's boat that she's on with Project Evelyn. The mold experiment first crashes. She gets saved by the Baker. Mia gets saved by the Baker family. She tries to leave them a note saying, like, listen, thank you for saving me. Kind of don't have anything to do with me because I work with a shady company. If you see a little girl on that wreckage, on that boat wreckage, don't go near her. They, of course, don't listen.
I think it's too late. I think by that time it's too late.
Right, because of the mold already kind of spread, huh?
Because like so it's confirmed that her and her partner, the old guy Alvin, whatever his name was, they were working for the Connections on that boat, transferring Evelyn to a base in Central America. During that course of time, Evelyn loses her shit, and they crash in Louisiana, and Jack rescues Maya, and and then they get taken over by Evelyn.
Right, and Evelyn's desire is just to have a family, hence why she keeps...
Yeah. The reason her name is Evelyn is because she's the 5th installment of their experiments, started back in 2000. So it made it from Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, and she's Echo. And the cool thing is, like, the previous version, you can make a serum from it, which you come across in the game with that weird little fetus thing on the arm, is a D-type. And if you inject yourself with that serum, you become immune to the mind-controlling effects of the next version. So that would be the E-type.
Which would be Evelyn, which would be Evelyn. And so that's the first instance that occurs for Dulve is in October 2014. Right. Then there is Biohazard the Experience, which is a manga, and it's supposedly canon. It doesn't necessarily, it's kind of like more with the C virus, but it occurs in Japan, and timeline wise, it occurs after the wreckage of SS Annabelle, which is where Mia and Evelyn were on, or Maya, however, and then but before Resident Evil Vendetta. So it's like in that little bit of time there's like, C virus situation going on. Then there is in Umbrella Corps, the multiplayer function, you find out that Red Umbrella is still functioning, and they're the ones that are doing these experiments. And then we come to Resident Evil 7 Biohazard for the main game, Not a Hero, and End of Zoe.
So Ethan is just a regular civilian that gets infected with the E virus, which allows him to regenerate, like superior regeneration, which we see when his hand gets cut off and reattached. And there's a scene where if you get caught by Jack Baker, he cuts off your leg with the shovel, and then he tosses you a potion. He's like, yeah, put that shit back on. And he does. Which is probably why they use Ethan in Resident Evil 8, because of his regeneration ability. But he has the E virus in him. So does Mia. And when Jack says welcome to the family, it could be a triple entendre with that company. but mostly a double entendre with the Baker family, but also the mold, because there's a dream sequence that happens with Ethan where he can see like Jack and Zoe in this weird room, and so they're all connected with this by the mold.
Yeah.
But they're not mind controlled because they get rid of Evelyn. But he still has that regeneration ability, which is at the end of the game, when Blue Umbrella comes and gives him the Ramrod ammo, it stops that regeneration from happening, which is how they were able to eliminate Evelyn in the first place.
Yeah, just to clarify, so the Ramrod ammunition is specifically an anti-bio weapon created by Blue Umbrella. I think it's fair to say that everybody was shocked when one of the soldiers takes their masks off and says, "Hey, I'm Redfield."
At first, I thought it was Hunk. I was like, "Oh shit, Hunk's here."
Right, but it's apparently Chris Redfield. So several things have occurred. They kill off Evelyn with this Ramrod ammunition, right? And then the events of Not a Hero are happening, to which you find out. I mean, throughout the game, you kind of
because during the whole like Louisiana incident, Lucas is actually becomes part of the connections, and he's established as like head researcher.
Yes.
So they and during the game you can find photos of like a helicopter, and they're like, "Oh, are they watching us?" And it's the Blue Umbrella helicopter. So apparently they were watching them the whole time.
Yeah.
And Chris, Blue Umbrella specifically requests Chris Redfield from the BSAA to help them on this mission. So that's sus. Yeah. They also, every weapon they use is named after Albert Wesker. The Albert 01, the Albert 02, or the AW-01-2.
Right.
He goes there under Operation Lurking Fear, which is a homage to H.P. Lovecraft, because he has a bunch of short stories like a story like that. But the suspicious things that are happening is that the genome codex that Ethan wears is product of the connections.
Yes,
it was actually what Mia and the guy Alvin was wearing, and it's later on, instead of calling you on the phone, Zoe uses that to communicate with you. And then at the end of the game, Chris uses it to communicate with Ethan. So I don't know if they just hacked it or whatever, but that was sus. And then, and so they take Mia and Ethan away, who have fully recovered. They don't have like any injuries whatsoever. And he goes into this DLC thing, which is super sus because it is titled Not a Hero. And since when has Chris Redfield not been the hero?
Right.
I mean, even links to Resident Evil 8 whenever he shoots a suspected
Correct.
Mia, so
what the fuck is going on? Okay.
At the end of Not a Hero, you defeat Lucas Baker, who was in the process of cutting ties with the connections. He apparently found a buyer for the E-type virus and was sending that information to someone.
Yes, we don't know who.
I always had the theory that the person he was in contact with on the other end during that entire DLC was Jill, but that remains to be seen.
Why would it be Jill?
Because think about it. I mean, whenever he saves her, she goes MIA for like 2 games. And all of a sudden, I mean, Resident Evil is known for bringing back characters very quietly under the radar, but also all of the sudden too.
Could be, but she was known to be in a rehabilitation center for 3 years.
Yeah, so that's why she went missing for 2 games, because she's in a rehab for what Wesker did to her with the mind control shit.
Yeah.
Still, yeah, I know, but still, also she could be acting really sus too. You never know.
Everybody's fucking sus. We don't know.
That could be our theory portion, because I also think that Mother Miranda might be Jill.
Yeah, we're getting into the theory crafting now. I'm excited.
But all that before was just straight up canon.
Yeah. So all the stuff we mentioned is that history is all canon, and it lays the groundwork for the theory that we're going to discuss. But just as a quick overview, clones, mind control, mind transfer, are and the search for immortality are the kind of overarching themes of all of these games.
We got the noble families.
Mm-hmm.
We have Ada, Hunk, and Wesker all connected.
Mm-hmm.
Chris is connected. And then something with Chris joins the Silver Dagger unit, which apparently is allowed to do extra legal things to get their mission done, which means illegal things to get their mission done.
Yes.
And their patch, interestingly enough, is a wolf with the Silver Dagger.
Right. And that's what you see in Resident Evil 8 now. In Resident Evil 8, here we are into the theory crafting portion. I know it's a lot of information, but it
sets everything up.
It is important. Yes.
Yeah.
We actually
it sets everything up.
We cut out like 90% of the lore just to name the parts that were relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like if we only stuck to the lore plus what was relevant, it would have gotten super confusing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah. Yeah, and just been crazy fucking long. But yeah, so that's...
It was already crazy long.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing is that like we didn't even go into like all the little side things that happen in the mansion with Chris and Rebecca too.
Yeah,
we could also talk about that.
We didn't talk about Carlos. We didn't talk about like nothing.
Right. There's so much other things that are happening in Resident Evil. This is just what's pertinent to the to you know
Resident Evil 8. Yeah, we tried to focus. It all starts from like Spencer, and we tried to focus on his nobility and because it started in like the 50s. We know that Resident Evil 8, Lady D's whole crew has been around at least since the 1950s.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So
even the merchant. I mean, we could create theories on that guy too.
Yeah. That's the whole thing, right? All this is a setup and layout for when we start discussing the theory for Resident Evil 8.
I have no clue what's happening in Resident Evil 8.
No, but we're going in blind here, okay? But you guys, honestly, this is the first part to what will ensue in even more chaos next time, because it's getting closer and closer to the release day, and even what I'm thinking of doing, instead of doing every other Friday, since this is very important to release, I'm going to make sure that these come out every Friday.
Word.
Because I want people to know that, hey, we're not playing around with this release, all right?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So, you guys, part 1 of Chaos. Are we good? How are we feeling?
Feeling good. I'm ready to get into the theory crafting.
Yeah, we had to get through the boring backstory of Resident Evil.
Yeah, if you could call it boring.
Well, a lot of people haven't played like every single game, and they probably never read the files. They just, play through it, whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They just go through and be like, oh, zombies, pew.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Pew pew.
Yeah. Hashtag pew.
Which makes Resident Evil 6 the best game.
No. You see, he's doing this on purpose. He's doing this shit on purpose. I don't like it. No, unstan. No.
Listen.
We're not doing this today. It can't.
But I'll say, Resident Evil 6 has a good chunk of important shit for lore, so we gotta give credit where credit's due. Also, some of our favorite voice actors are in it. So
true, but they could have done way better and not made it multiplayer. Just saying. Hallelujah. Okay.
No. Anyway, we'll be here all day discussing Resident Evil 6. Let's go.
But you guys, we're gonna leave it off for right now. The next podcast, we're gonna get into more of the lore. We're gonna get into some theories. We are going to be getting into our favorite moments of the series. I'm honestly really, really so excited for this next podcast. It's gonna be really, really amazing. So, you guys, without further ado, I don't know what the next word I was gonna say. I forgot. Without further ado, I'm just gonna bow. No one can see me, but it's okay. But you guys, if you all like our faces and what do we do, please be sure to subscribe if you're on YouTube and follow if you are listening to this on Spotify. And as always, stay casually nerdy. I'll see you guys in the next video and podcast. Bye guys.
Bye.
My God, like bye.